Guzzlers. Oh, it's been a while since I had old goblin. It's not a tiny rubber goblin, I'm just using tiny rubber. Oh, I don't think that's going to last very long. Totally relevant to what we're cooking, because tonight we are beginning to use this humble fruit. Yes, you heard me right. Courgette, a fruit. Now, some of you across the water there, well actually across the water the other way as well, as it turns out, we'll call this a zucchini. And I was going to despair of that, but technically speaking, it is one of the names for the courgette. Courgette, zucchini, baby marrow. So tonight we are going to be going veggie with these fruit. We're going to make a sort of French Moroccan dish, even though the French never really like these to begin with, but we'll come to that. So we're going to make a courgette Moroccan style bake. Cheers. As it happens, I said to you just now that the French aren't too keen on these things, and the reason being they consider them a bit flavourless, and to be honest, they're not far wrong there, are they? So we would normally perhaps have these as a vegetable accompaniment, even though they're a fruit. Or we might have them in that classic French dish, ratatouille, which doesn't contain rat, as you probably won't know anyway, because you've probably seen the film. But possibly the ratatouille that sort of made the French sort of like these a bit. But as it happens, this recipe comes from a Frenchman. This is from Stefan, whose channel, French, I think it's French Cooking Academy, or it might be the French Academy Cooking, I can't remember. I think it's French Cooking Academy, I can't remember. Anyway, I saw this actually came up on his thing the other day, and I thought, well actually, this is quite a healthy veggie, even though they're fruit, meal. So what you're going to want is a sort of a largish roasting tray. Now, the quantity he makes is for about four people as a side dish. We're going to have it as a main. So I've sort of upped the quantities a little bit. Where possible, try and get yourself some courgettes about the same size, medium courgettes. Unfortunately, we had a couple in, and the wife went out and bought some, and she just had to buy what there was. So I'll let her off this time, because they don't match. Equally, we want them straight. The straighter, the better. They've got a bit of a kink in them. They're not quite so good. So what we're going to do is we want to cut along them courgettes and follow the line of the courgettes, okay? Cut them into quarters, and then we're going to chuck them into that tray. Down a bit wonky. We're trying to get the pieces about the same size. Okay, so that's what we're going to get doing. But don't think you've escaped without a chat. I'm going to tell you about the courgette. So that's then transferred to tray. Now, this is the biggest tray I've got, and I could do it on two, but I can't be asked. Because ideally, once we've coated these, we want to try and separate them, but they're tough. So, just going to put them to one side. Next thing we need to do is prepare our spice, or our spice mix. So I've got a couple of onions here because 2 of them are a bit on the small side, and as it happens I only have 1 brown onion. So I've got a brown onion and 2 red onions. So we're just going to get these peeled and finely diced. Phew! I'll take the fingers off. And then the only other thing apart from the spices, we're going to put it in some garlic. And then some breadcrumbs. Garlic and breadcrumbs. 2 mils in one. Whoops, peeled a bit too much of that, never mind. So, the courgette. So the courgette is actually a sort of summer squash. Okay? And I keep telling you, it's a fruit, because that's what it is. The courgette, or zucchini, is the fruit of the courgette plant. So why do we call it a vegetable? Well, essentially, it doesn't have that lovely sort of sweet, tangy taste that most people associate with fruit. They say this is more like your boring vegetable, a bit flavourless. So hence we tend to call it vegetable. It's actually fruit. It's actually a pepo or peppo. P-E-P-O. Right, I'm just going to clear that. Actually, what I might do before I clear that is, I was just going to say skim the garlic. Peel some of the garlic. I'm going to do, well, I don't know. Sod it, let's chuck them all in. Who cares? So I'm going to get these peeled and then I'll have a little tidy up and then we're going to get chopping. My oven's on. I've got my oven on at about 200. It's going to be, like I say, it's going to be baked, isn't it? Because we said it's a baked courgette dish. So, I'll have a little tidy up, get them peeled, and then I'll go run you through the spices and a little bit more about the fruit. It's actually a berry, which is the swollen ovary of the zucchini or courgette flower with a hardened epicarp. That's the rind, that's the green bit. So it's not that hard. So my garlic, I'm not going to bother trying to chop all that finely. I'm going to use my garlic crusher. This is the Oxo garlic crusher. I'm really impressed with this. Probably snap in half now. Because my other one did. It wasn't an Oxo one. And although this was a bit on the expensive side, I got it when it was reduced. And I have to say, it's been bloody magic. I've almost been tempted to buy some other Oxo. What was it? I think it was a can opener, but that was before coffee expensive. And I thought, no, my existing can opener is fine. Anyway, I digress. So, the actual courgette fruit is actually an immature fruit. And even the problem is, if you're not careful, I never knew this, but you can get gastro problems, stomach problems, with courgettes, not your normal courgettes, but essentially if they're not sort of grown correctly, or they get cross-contaminated with sort of wilder versions of the sort of courgette plant, if you like, it can actually lead to these toxins, because it's a sort of cucumber. Is it a curbica or something? I don't know, but it's related to that. It is related to the marrow, sort of, right? But that's essentially what it was, and they can form these toxins, which are not very nice. And so, if they're not grown correctly, or like I say, they've been allowed to cross-pollinate and get contaminated with the genes, if you like, from other sort of wilder varieties, it can lead to these build up these toxins. So when you eat courgette, if they taste bitter, don't eat them. Most of your shop bought ones are fine, but I'm just saying, if you get one that's tasting a bit bitter and you think, oh, this don't taste right, it's not right, don't eat it. So Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to dice up my onion and shove that in there. Diced up most of that onion, and it's gone in there. I'm just doing this final bit, which is trying to be a little bit of a master and go everywhere. So, like I said to you, the courgette has these three names, all of which basically mean, excuse me, oh dear, my beer's getting bad, small marrow. So, zucchini is actually an Italian word, and the reason Americans refer to it as zucchini is probably because it was the Italian immigrants to the States that introduced in about the 1920s the courgette, or the zucchini as the Italians call it. Now, courgette is actually, well, so zucchini is a loan word, because it's loaned, if you like, from the Italian. Courgette is loaned from the French, because courgette means small marrow in French, and baby marrow is basically South African English. Don't know why. So we've got that in there. So actually, that's all our chopping done. So we're just going to add our spice mix to that, and then we'll be ready to spice up our courgette. There you go, there's onion and garlic. So what I've got here is 2 teaspoons of coarse sea salt. Okay. I've got 2 teaspoons of ground white pepper. I've got 2 teaspoons of paprika. I've got 2 teaspoons, actually as it happens I've got a little bit more because I like to grind these from cumin seeds, so I've got just over 2 teaspoons of that. And then I've got 2 teaspoons of a Moroccan spice, or a spice mix, ras ahnou. You can also buy it from the supermarket as Moroccan seasoning. Okay, and that goes. That's got a little bit of a kick to it. And then I've got about 6 tablespoons, about 45 mils of water, and we're going to add about the same amount again of olive oil. Now, you can actually add more olive oil if you need to. Okay, perhaps not necessarily at this stage, but you might decide when we come to do the sort of final bit with this that we're going to add a little bit more, because we're going to be adding breadcrumbs. But at this stage, breadcrumbs are just sat to one side. There's about 2 cups, 60 grams of breadcrumbs there. Okay, you get cups and grams today. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to take a couple of spoonfuls of this, and we're going to massage it in to our courgettes. That's what I'm saying to you, really. This is where you don't want long fingernails. I mean, most of my fingernails, as soon as they start getting any length, they break. But I've got some, and they stick in these courgettes, and they start, I'll get lumps of courgette in there. Isn't that nice? So what we want to do is, just like I say, try and just get them all a bit coated, and then, where possible, try and separate them out a bit before we put them in the oven. Like I say, the oven should be at 200. So we are going to be using the rest of that, alright, and we are going to be adding the breadcrumbs. Like I say, we're trying to spice them up so they've got a bit of flavour to them. Okay, so I think for now that's going to do. Okay, so before I put them in the oven, I'm just going to wash my hands. You're going to want some paper to cover it with, alright, and then
I can tell you a little bit more about courgettes because it's so exciting.
So now I'm just going to take a little bit more of this and just spread it over the top of some of them, and then we'll just take some paper. And now I've got a fan oven, so this is probably going to blow off, which I think the wife just did upstairs in the bath just before I turned the camera on, so you didn't hear it. You would have done if the camera had been on. She's going to tell me off for that later. Who cares? Right, so that's going in that oven, like I say, at 200. And we're going to bake that for 15 minutes. Okay. Now, I've moved on. I'm not sure I've had this before. This is a Goblin Stout. As it says up here, mischievously, or something like that. Smooth. Apparently, it's rich, hoppy, malty, easy drinking, definitely that, and fruity. And I have to say, my first mouthful of that, I thought, ooh, that's a bit fruity. That's nice. Not as nice as Tiny Rebel Stay Puffed, but then again, that's a bit heavier going and a bit sweeter. But certainly, that's not bad at all. I wonder if you can buy them separately. So, after the 15 minutes, we'll bring them out of the oven and we'll be using the rest of that. Okay, you're going to want a frying pan, and you're going to want some serving plates or a serving platter to put your courgettes onto, because we need all the juices and the other crap to put in the frying pan. So we've been looking at the fruit, if you like, but the courgette flowers are often used, excuse me, in cooking. They can be cooked, they can just be used as a garnish. The female flower is a nice golden sort of flower, and that's the end of the whoop bit. The male flower tends to come off the stalks on the stem, but both flowers are harvested, if you like. Both flowers can be cooked with and used. So where did the courgette come from? Well, our modern courgettes, excuse me, that's the beer talking. Our modern courgettes actually do originate from Italy, from around about sort of Milan, late 19th century. But they originated over 7,000 years ago in Mesoamerica. Okay, they were a type of squash that was growing there, and then of course, like a lot of things, they were brought over to Europe, and the cultivars that came from that in Italy became the courgette or zucchini that we know today. But they are a very, very old fruit. Now, like I said, the Americans in about the 1920s started talking about these zucchinis, and like I say, they were probably from Italian immigrants that brought them over. There you go. So that's the rest of the history lesson. Still some facts for you. Don't think you've got away with it yet. 15 minutes. It stands back so it don't get steamed. We're going to bring that tray out, and at this point we're going to lose the paper, and we're now going to put the rest of that mixture on top. Okay, that bowl will be finished with, because the next thing we're going to want is the frying pan. So this is now going to go back in there for about 15 minutes or more, and what we want is for that spice mix and everything to start caramelising, and when we start seeing the edges of the courgette starting to brown, then we know they're done. We can bring it out, and then we'll make the crumb mixture. I will give myself another beer, and as it happens, it turns out I've only got one more fact for you. All you sporty people who go out there and think,
I must get my potassium levels correct.
so you sit there and you take a medium-sized banana. Well, you're getting it all wrong. If you was to munch on a medium-sized courgette, you'd be getting far more potassium. So there you go. Get your gob around a courgette. Right, that's another 20 minutes. So I've turned the oven off. And what we're going to do now is remove it from the oven. And if you were to serve this as like a side dish, this is where you want to transfer it to a nice serving platter, if you like. I'm just going to put it on this plate, and then we're going to be wanting to keep it warm somewhere. Okay, so although we're going to be reusing what's in that tray, I'm not too worried at the moment if some of it, obviously the mixture, the topping, ends up transferring over to these. Essentially we want sort of the liquidy part, and then this is where you about to pick that up with my hand in. Must be that pale ale. After that hobgobbling, that pale ale, I'll have to say, not as good. It's like I'm going out now on a low, whereas perhaps if I'd saved that stout, I could have gone out on a high. Anyway, so I've transferred the courgettes to a plate, and we're going to keep that warm, okay, ready for serving. I mean, you could put it on warm serving plates right now if you wanted to, okay, but what's left in here, we're now going to smooth out, that's what I mean. Scrape that out into that frying pan, and like I say, this is where, if need be, you could add some more olive oil, okay? And we're now going to chuck in those breadcrumbs, and I'm just going to mix all that together. And this is where, if it's a little bit dry still, okay, if we find that there's not quite enough liquid there to sort of properly mix in those breadcrumbs, we'll add a little drizzle or so of olive oil. We don't want it soaking wet in olive oil, all right? So see how you go. To be honest, I'm thinking I might not add any, because at the end of the day, this is like a crumb to go on top, to give it that extra little bite, extra little flavour. Well, the flavour's there with the other rest of it anyway, isn't it? And actually I've noticed already I'm getting some liquid draining out of them courgettes, so I might chuck that in there anyway. So I'm just going to put that somewhere warm, and then we'll cook this off. And then all you're going to want is a little squeeze of lemon juice. I'm just going to put this on a low to medium heat, and we just want to cook this, keep turning it, because obviously it's quite a dry mixture. We cook that back 5 minutes, okay? So me baked courgettes are keeping warm at the moment. Now we are just going to savour the cooking of the spiced onion crumb as it nestles on the warming pan, gently embracing the spices, being warmed by the heat, becoming golden brown. Isn't that the name of a song? So, once that crumb's done, we're ready to serve. Squeeze of lemon juice. And probably a different beer. Number 3. Yeah. Now I did want to play some music to this because B&B have just released, well actually they released on the 28th, but there's supply problems in the UK, so we can't get it. So, but I can get the digital version, and I did want to play that in the background, but YouTube is saying you can't do that, just copyright issues. But can I just say, it's fucking classic. Go and listen to it. Go and buy it, bastard. Right, so I've now dished out the courgettes, tipped the remaining juice back in the pat. That just sort of dried all out and got ready. I decided that third beer ruined my hobgoblin experience, so I'm on the Shiraz. So I've just cooked that a little bit longer because I chucked the final juices that were on the serving dish into there. And now what we do is we take some of that crumb mixture and we sprinkle it over the top. I'm making a little bit of a hash of that, but who cares? Okay, so here is our common or garden courgette fruit. Okay, so I'm just going to put that there and just cut through that. So it's still quite firm. Okay, it's been baked with those spices and everything, and then we've got our little crumb on top. The courgette's not overcooked, so it's not gone sort of mushy like it can do. It's got a nice crisp bite to it. There's sweetness to it, which actually a lot of that I think comes from the courgette. Might try another little bit, because I didn't really get much of the crunch. Now there's a big hit from that Moroccan spice. You're getting that heat of the chilli. You might not have seen it, but when I tip that in, there's chilli seeds in that ras al hanout or whatever, and that heat's coming through. But there's a sort of sweetness. Ooh, I think I've got some chilli in my eye. There's some sweetness, but there's that spice. A little bit of crunch from the breadcrumbs. Cool, this could almost turn me into a veggie.